Okay, I think everything is good and we are live, and hopefully you can hear and see everything okay. Awesome. Okay, welcome to student development practice. My name's Joanna. If we've not met before, I am an alumni student at Your Yoga Flow, and I'm also a faculty member at the school. So it's my pleasure to be on the platform with you and to be sharing some of my teaching and experiences with you. So, for today's 30-minute session, we're going to be discussing summer practices and rituals that perhaps you would like to integrate into your own practice or into your teaching. As we know, on this side of the world anyway, here in Canada, we're just entering the hottest time of the year. And in fact, the last couple of days we had a bit of a heat wave. So it just reminded me of these intuitive practices that we know and that we already do that help us stay balanced and grounded. But it can be a nice reminder if we have forgotten, or sometimes when we find ourselves in a very flustered, overheated, overwhelmed state, it can be easy to forget the things that we need to do to help ourselves cool and ground. So today's practice will just be some reminders and maybe some useful tips and tools that you can integrate into your own classes. So let's see how we go. So I thought we could begin with a pranayama called Sitali breathing. This is a cooling breath practice, and I find is super effective. So this practice I would invite students to do from a seated position, but you could do it from a reclined position too if you felt that works better for you or for your class. So I'm going to guide the breath in case you don't know it or you just need a reminder. So I'll do a couple of rounds first, and then we can do a bit together. So for this breath, you are going to need to manipulate your tongue a little bit, because for this breath, we start to curl the tongue in, almost like you're wrapping the tongue around a straw. So it would look like this. But as we know, not everybody can do that action with their tongue. So another option for those people would be to just imagine that they are sucking on a straw, so that they would purse the lips like this. So basically, you're making a small hole for the inhale breath to enter, whether it's through the curled tongue or whether it's through the lips. So the inhale breath is through that small hole. And then at the top, you hold the cool air in. So you hold the breath, just a little breath retention. You can just do this for a second or two. And then the exhale breath comes through the nose, so that you're retaining that cool air in the body. So if you're doing this practice yourself, maybe you hold the breath in for a little longer. If you're teaching this type of breath work to beginner students, maybe the breath retention is just a second or two. So you kind of figure that out as you dive into the practice. So I'll guide or I'll demonstrate, sorry, a couple of rounds, and then maybe you can try it too and just see if it has an impact on your body. So sitting tall with hands to thighs, rolling the shoulders down the back, you can close your eyes and just begin to receive your breath normally as it is, not trying to alter or change anything. And we'll begin. So inhaling through your curled tongue or pursed lips. Holding the breath at the top, closing the lips. And exhale through the nose. And again, inhale through the tongue or lips. Hold the breath at the top, closing the lips. And exhale through the nose. Let's do a couple of rounds all together. Inhale. Hold at the top. Exhale through the nose. Inhale. Hold at the top. Exhale. Take a few more rounds at your own pace. And just take one more cycle. Once you've completed that cycle, just sit for a breath or two and notice where you feel coolness within your body. Perhaps it's more in the back of the throat or in the chest cavity. Maybe you feel it up in the crown of your head or someplace else. So that is Sitali breathing. Sometimes I'll teach that right at the very beginning of a practice, especially if it's a very hot day and I'm noticing the energy of the room is a little bit flustered or energized. That might be something I teach then. Or if I've taught quite a vigorous or powerful practice and we've built a lot of internal heat, I might teach that pranayama nearing towards the end of class to help cool the core temperature down. I also wanted to touch on specific asana that are good for cooling. So asana that is focused on the floor would be the best choices. So anything where as much of your body is in contact with the mat as possible. So shapes on the back, shapes on the front are really good options. I'm going to demonstrate a couple of shapes that I would recommend. I'd also recommend that the style of practice becomes a lot slower. So a yin practice would be great in the hotter days, or a very slow, mindful hatha practice where you have longer holds and more of your body is connected to the ground. So it becomes very cooling on the body as you receive that coolness from the earth into your body. So one of the shapes I want to show you that I find really effective for cooling and grounding is half frog pose. And doing this shape from your belly, so lying on the front of your body. Not only is this cooling, but when the front of our body is in contact with the floor, it can be super grounding and soothing on our nervous system, which in turn can lead to internal cooling. So I'll just show you what that looks like if you are not familiar. So I would invite the students to maybe start on their hands and knees to come into this pose and then bend the elbows and come all the way down onto the belly. I'd create a little bit of a cushion with the two hands stacked on top of one another and then the forehead to the hands. Or for some students, they're going to find it more comfortable to rest an ear to those hands or to put a little bolster or pillow under their head. So whichever way that the student's head is turned, that's the knee that we're going to lift. So right now I have the right ear resting on the floor and I'm looking to the left. So I'm going to bend the left knee up the side of the body. And then we're going to settle the front of the pelvis and the front of the abdomen and chest to the floor. This is your half frog pose on your front body. You'll encourage your students to relax around their hips and glutes here so that both of their hip bones are facing down to the floor. You might encourage your students to close their eyes and begin to breathe in and out of their lower belly to help with that grounding process. You can invite your students to observe the coolness that they're receiving from the floor into their body. And you can hold this shape for time, anywhere up to 5 minutes would be nice. Here, this is a gentle hip opener, a stretch for the adductor muscles of the inner leg lines. And then coming out, you would slide both legs to meet one another, and then you would simply change the position of the head. So your left ear is to your hands or the prop underneath your head, and then the right knee slides up the side of your body. Again, you're relaxing the front of the pelvis into the floor, relaxing your shoulders, breathing into lower belly. And then when you're ready, you can bring the legs back down. Another lovely cooling shape, grounding shape is child's pose. So taking the knees wide, big toes together, melting the pelvis back to the heels, forehead to the floor, or forehead on a prop. If students have high blood pressure, dizziness, vertigo, then encourage them to put a block under their head so their head stays on the same line as their heart. This shape can be cooling and grounding because those internal organs, those vulnerable vital organs on the front of the body are face down to the floor, and you've got the shell of the back that's keeping them safe and protected. So the body knows that it can start to rest and relax. A couple other cooling shapes would be shapes like butterflies, Baddha Konasana or Supta Baddha Konasana. So you could do butterfly with the soles of the feet together and the knees wide, rooting the pelvis down. Anything where the pelvis is grounding through the floor is going to help with cooling and grounding. Or if you want to take the reclined option, Supta Baddha Konasana, then you've got more of the back spread onto the floor, which could be even more cooling. And then maybe with the arms expanding too. So they are receiving coolness from the floor. This is another nice option for a cooling practice. Something else that we often do in many classes to help wrap up the practice towards Shavasana is a cooling supine twist. So twists either with the knees together, moving over to the left for a few breaths, opening up the arms perhaps, and then the same to the right. You could have your knees together. You could have one knee to chest and take that over. You could bind the legs so that they're an eagle. Twists are a great way to wring out the spine. They're a great way to release. They're a great way to encourage more breath into the body. All of this can help with that cooling process. And then, of course, Shavasana is the ultimate place to rest and digest and for the core temperature to slowly and mindfully cool down. You'll want to just be careful if you are teaching a cooling practice that the body doesn't end up getting too cool especially if the space you're teaching in is air conditioned or has fans. You might have certain students that feel the cold very quickly. So if that's the case, make sure that they have what they need, some blankets that they can put around their body so that in Shavasana they are not uncomfortable. So yeah, these are just a few reminders, things that we may or may not already be integrating into our practices to help our students find that balance and cooling. And a few other things just to mention. I would suggest that if you're teaching a meditation for a cooling practice, that it is done on the back, maybe towards the end of the practice. Again, so that the back of the body can receive coolness, the breath can slow down. You just want to make sure, though, that the meditation is still an active position. So I would encourage the students to have their feet on the floor and the knees bent, maybe just have the knees touching in and the feet as wide as the mat, just so that the legs are still in some kind of activity and you've not made it just directly into Shavasana. This is a great way to help with that grounding again, the cooling, the slower breath, all moving in the direction of coolness and balance. Another idea that a teacher friend of mine uses, she teaches in warm classes. She teaches only like in an infrared heated room. So the room gets very hot. Doesn't matter what type of class she's teaching, you're going to build heat. So at the end of all of her practices, she comes around with cool, damp cloths that she washes and cleans herself. It's just a little something that she adds to the class. And she keeps them all in a like a freezer box. So they're all clean, they're all damp, and she puts a couple of drops of essential oil on them, usually a lavender oil. And she will place these on either on the top of the head or just on the forehead during Shavasana. And her students absolutely love it. So that's another something you might consider for your classes. Another idea is peppermint oil mixed with some kind of vegetable oil, like a fractionated coconut oil is a really good option. You could create a roll on and you could roll that onto your neck or shoulders in the heat, or on your students' neck and shoulders if they're comfortable with that, because that has wonderful cooling properties. And again, might be nice to end your practice with, or maybe at the start of the practice, if your students are coming in and they're very hot and bothered, maybe it would be a nice way to kind of set the tone for the class. The only thing you have to be careful of is that peppermint is quite strong. And so you want to make sure that it's away from the eyes, because that's really uncomfortable if you start to sweat and it goes in your eyes. So try not to put it around the head area, like near the eyes. Try and keep it more in the back area and the back of the neck and shoulders, where your students are less likely to touch it and then rub their face. A few other things I would suggest that I like to incorporate just into my own practices and rituals would be choosing cooler foods. So foods like cucumbers, watermelon, coconut, kale, peppermint, apple, celery, cilantro. These are all cooling foods, especially for pitta. If you are a pitta dosha, predominantly a pitta dosha, you might find that throughout the year you're eating those kinds of foods to keep you balanced. However, if you are more vata, then these foods maybe you don't necessarily consume that much of, because they are too cooling for your body. But when the weather is so warm, you might find that you're gravitating towards those foods because you too might be feeling the heat. So I definitely start to move more towards those foods, maybe in smoothies and things like that, or salads, and a lot more hydration, coconut water with electrolytes in, lots of H2O, keeping the body nice and hydrated throughout the day. You might add ice to your drinks, I don't know, or you might just keep things at room temperature, depending again on your constitution and what your body can receive comfortably without feeling too cool. And another nice thing I like to do is take cooler baths or cooler showers. So the temperature of the water is a lot cooler than normal. And then using a coconut oil on the skin, which is cooling, and placing that as kind of like a body oil after the bath or shower, I find is again a really good way to add that cool element to those hot moments. And sometimes I would put a little bit of peppermint oil in there, but that can be very intensely cool. So just be mindful of that. So those are just a few things to consider, to teach your students about, to incorporate into your classes. And I wanted to finish with some journaling prompts that I've just shared with my students recently because I taught a summer solstice workshop. And so we were talking a lot about the qualities of summer and how it can be a time of saying yes a lot. It can be a very social time. It can be a time of overexerting ourselves, using up a lot of our energy because we're feeling good and we're outdoors more. We feel more energized and we feel more vitality running through our bodies. And this is wonderful. But we can also end up feeling very depleted because of all of this extra energy that we are exerting, maybe the extra heat that we're building in the body. So it's very important to also know when to say no. And it's also very important to have these practices that we've just been discussing to keep us balanced and in a steady spot, a steady space, so that we don't end the summer feeling completely depleted. We want to finish the summer ready for the next season. So a couple of the journaling questions that we use, I'll read to you, and maybe you want to answer them yourself, or maybe you want to use these in your own classes with your own students. So the first one is this. What have you accomplished this year that you feel most proud of? What have you accomplished this year that you feel most proud of? And in that moment, we were talking about abundance. You know, summer is the season of abundance. We planted all these seeds at the start of the year and we've helped them to grow and we've nourished and nurtured them. And now we're kind of reaping the benefits of a lot of that hard work. So what have you accomplished this year that you feel really proud of? The next question. What healthy boundaries do you have in place at this time? What healthy boundaries do you have in place at this time? And this relates to knowing when to say yes and knowing when to say no. And the lead on question to that would be, where do you acknowledge healthier boundaries are needed? Where do you acknowledge healthier boundaries are needed? The next one. I know I'm not giving you a lot of time, but hopefully you can revisit these or just jot down the questions and answer them later. What matters to you? And do you invest enough time and energy into those things? What matters most to you, and do you invest enough time and energy into those things? And then, because this is the season of abundance, we're seeing it all around us in nature. We're seeing, blooming flowers. We're seeing, you know, wildlife. We're seeing the trees in full bloom. We're seeing people, the best of people. So this time of abundance helps us to recognize the abundance that we have within ourselves. So these are a couple of questions relating to that. Who at this time is supporting you? Who at this time is supporting you? Who at this time is teaching you? Who at this time is teaching you? And who at this time are you most grateful for? Who at this time are you most grateful for? So I hope some or all of that was useful to you. I hope that these practices help you. I hope that some of these practices you're already doing. A lot of it is very intuitive and instinctive, and we know what to do, but sometimes the reminders are helpful and useful. And sometimes we pick things up along the way, such as the cold cloths, or the use of an essential oil, or the reminder of the specific cooling foods that we can enjoy, or the ways to teach our yoga practice to help ourselves and help our students. So whatever you took from this practice today, I hope that it serves you and your students well. Feel free to reach out to me, and we can continue the conversation. I have a lot more of those journal prompts if you're after some more. So I'd be more than happy to share those with you. I will put the link to my website in the comments section, so you can find me there, or you can tag me in a comment on this page. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. Enjoy the summer if that's the season that you are currently in on your side of the world. And if not, then maybe you can store up these practices and reminders for when that season comes around for you. Okay, take care. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.